Hi there, I'm Randy Patterson and this is Psychology Salon, a channel about psychological issues. If you like this kind of thing, click subscribe. How do we learn about the world? I would argue that one of the ways is through the stories that we hear and see. These stories often have underlying themes that appear over and over and over again. Even if they're not stated explicitly, these ideas can seep into our brain and influence the way that we see ourselves and our place in the world. Today, I'll talk about three related themes: hidden royalty, hidden talent, and the hidden messiah. I do a lot of work with young adults who I think occupy a difficult place in life. We've built a world where half or more of all wealth goes to the very few people who already have more than they can possibly spend, leaving those starting out with crumbs. Real wages at the bottom end haven't gone up since the 1970s, and in the United States, one of the wealthiest societies on earth, they've actually gone down. As well, the world is in the midst of an unprecedented shift in climate from a phenomenon that we've known about since the 1890s. And we've simply decided that preventing the coming generations from dealing with the fallout is just too inconvenient for us to bother with. It's no surprise to me that many young adults look to their future with both anxiety and resentment. They probably should be resentful. Earlier generations, including mine, have looked at them and said, "You're simply not important enough to bother inconveniencing myself." On top of that, our societal myths and stories seem to promote a kind of helplessness. One of the ways we do this is by subtly emphasizing talent over skill. Talent is something you're born with, something that's already present and that you have no control over. You don't get to decide whether you have talent. Skill is something that you develop through practice, and you do have control over that. If something is a talent, you might feel that you can recognize that pretty quickly. Pick up a basketball and your level of talent will show itself. If it doesn't, you're not talented. If it's a skill, you'll develop it over time and you won't expect to have it right away. Believing that something is a talent takes it out of your hands. Believing that it's a skill puts it into your hands. Most things in life are skills. Talent is mainly relevant at the very far extremes of human achievement. You may need loads of practice, plus some native talent, to win gold in an Olympic sport. You may need sharp eyes and lightning reflexes to drive in Formula One. But to swim at the local pool, or drive on the highway, or play basketball in the rec league, or play guitar in a bar band, you mainly need practice. But skills aren't exciting to portray on screen, so we don't see them very much. The stories we see through our childhood and teen years and into adulthood often focus much more on the discovery of talent. Someone who looks like an average person, often from very modest circumstances, and they turn out to be extraordinary in some way. Not because they've practiced very much, just because of something outside their control that happens to be a part of who they are. This extraordinary thing, whatever it is usually as much of a surprise to them as it is to anyone else. There are three versions of this story: hidden royalty, hidden talent, and hidden messiah. And they tend to be interrelated. Some stories are a combination of two of them, or all three. So let's start with hidden royalty. An average person is discovered, much to their own surprise, that they actually have royal blood and are heir to a throne of some kind. The classic example of this is the Princess Diaries. Shy San Francisco teenager and outcast, they're usually outcasts, Mia Thermopolis turns out to be the heir to the throne of Genovia. No thanks to anything she's done. She winds up with a glamorous life that's a bit like winning the lottery. In Game of Thrones, Jon Snow seems to be the illegitimate son of Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, but he isn't entitled to anything, so he goes off into the wilderness. Later, it turns out that he is actually the son of the Targaryens, and so has a legitimate claim to the Iron Throne. Shall I go on? Hidden royalty is a recurrent theme throughout mythology and legend, from Oedipus onward. Why? All of us, particularly in our younger years, are conscious of our insecurities and of the slings and arrows that outrageous fortune launches at us. We really want to be special. And these stories are all about that longing. Someone who doesn't see themselves as special turns out to be special after all. Cinderella is, surprise, surprise, beautiful and captures the heart of the prince. We feel like the clumsy and underweight Viking teenager Hiccup in How to Train Your Dragon, who turns out to have the heart of a lion and can tame the dragons, victimizing his community. What about hidden talent? This theme involves someone who seems average, like Hiccup, so we can identify with them, and then they turn out to have some remarkably useful ability that they've never really practiced. They just had the talent for it. In The Umbrella Academy, Vanya Hargreaves seems to be the only member of the family without some kind of superpower. Needless to say, this turns out not to be true. In fact, they're the most powerful of the whole bunch. In Star Wars, Luke Skywalker is a fairly average rural farm boy until he's revealed to have a special talent for the Force. He manages to get a handle on that ability by what looks like just a couple of hours in the Millennium Falcon with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Star Wars is especially interesting because the Force is described as something that pervades all living beings. Pretty egalitarian. It's in all of us. But then it very quickly reverts to being an elite trait that some people have and most do not. In a sense, the Force is a hidden talent, but it's also a kind of hidden royalty. Luke probably gets it from you-know-who turns out to be his dad. In The Last Starfighter, Alex is a pretty average teenager who lives with his mother in a trailer park. He spends most of his time playing a video game that turns out to have been planted there by aliens. The game is a kind of audition device because the aliens are trying to discover someone with the unique ability to pilot their spaceships against an invading force. In Turning Red, May is an average Toronto schoolgirl until the family curse emerges, turning her into a giant red panda with terrific strength. Apparently, it runs in her family. In The Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen seems to be a reasonably normal teenage girl, but turns out to be an extraordinary warrior. In the X-Men and multiple other superhero movies, reasonably normal people turn out to have extraordinary powers. Usually not because they worked at them, but just by the accident of their birth or circumstances. You know, they're bitten by radioactive spiders, or they turn out to be from another planet, or their spaceship goes through some cosmic rays, or something goes wrong in the lab. What about Dune? Paul Atreides starts out as a kind of royalty. He's the heir to House Atreides from the very beginning, but it turns out he's actually the result of thousands of years of a breeding project to create a kind of superhuman. Once those powers are unleashed, he can leap to the head of the desert tribes without much boring practice and lead them into a war to topple the evil emperor. Okay, how about the hidden Messiah? Well, both Luke Skywalker and Paul Atreides are viewed as Messiah-like figures, again, mostly because of things beyond their control, their family history or genetic makeup. To them, we can add Neo from The Matrix, who seems to be an isolated, nerdish hacker until he's identified as the One, a human who can help humanity win out over the machines that have taken over. John Connor in The Terminator is another Messiah, playing out much the same plot. In Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Buffy Summers is a normal and somewhat ditzy high school student who turns out to be the chosen one, capable of fighting demons. And yes, of course, there's Harry Potter. He's a downtrodden orphan who lives under the stairs in his abusive relative's house. And it turns out that he's the key to saving the entire wizarding world from Voldemort. Other people are braver. Hermione is definitely smarter, but by virtue of his birth, he's the one. So, hidden royalty, hidden talent, hidden Messiah. 3 interrelated themes with a common core. Someone who doesn't suspect it and who usually starts out isolated or despised or socially inferior to their peers turns out to be special in some way. Not by choosing a goal and grinding away to develop skills, but by discovering something that's already inside them. They don't have to work at it, or not much. These themes aren't stated outright. They're just motifs that recur again and again and again in the stories of our youth. And we may not even notice their commonality. But through repetition, they may create in us a schema of success, a kind of archetypal idea of what success is and how it occurs. Achievement is a product not of gradual improvement and arduous practice, but of revelation. We discover something that we didn't know we had, and at that moment, everything changes. Most of what happens before doesn't matter. We just need to wait. Someday, Julie Andrews, or the Bene Gesserit, or Hagrid, or Obi-Wan Kenobi will knock on the door and usher us into a new life. Effort doesn't matter. Practice doesn't matter. Fate matters. It's a normal dream, but it is a dream. Our abilities tend to come to us through effort and repetition and practice. FedEx does not deliver them to our door. If we don't examine the dream and see it for what it is, we can feel bereft. We can spend our entire lives in a waiting room, hoping that Julie will come and reveal our specialness to ourselves and the world. We will wait there forever, and the knock will never come. We need to rise and open the door even though no one has knocked. And then we need to walk through it. There are other videos on this channel on the psychology of everyday life. Click the subscribe button for more. I also have an online course site, psychologysalon.teachable.com, with programs for professionals and for the general public. And my books, How to Be Miserable, 40 Strategies You Already Use, How to Be Miserable in Your 20s, and the Assertiveness Workbook are available from online booksellers. Thanks for watching.